You ever notice how some people just disappear? Not in a dramatic way. They don't announce it. They just stop posting. No stories. No selfies. No updates. And while everyone else is performing their lives online, they're just quiet. You might know someone like that. Maybe you are someone like that. And here's what's strange. In a world that screams for attention, their silence feels almost rebellious. But it's not what you think. Because the psychology behind people who never post reveals something most of us are too distracted to see. They're not hiding. They're not scared. They're not even antisocial. They've just figured out something the rest of us are still chasing. See, we live in a culture that equates visibility with value. If you're not posting, you're not living. If you're not sharing, you're not succeeding. We've been conditioned to believe that to matter, you must be seen. But what if that's the lie? What if the people who stay quiet online are actually the ones who understand life most clearly? Because while everyone's performing for an audience, they're experiencing without one. And that shift changes everything. Psychologists have studied this. People who refrain from posting frequently score higher on traits like emotional independence, self-restraint, and internal validation. They're trying to understand it. And in a world drowning in performances, that's rare. But before I show you why their silence holds so much power, you need to understand where it comes from. I used to post everything, every thought, every moment, every win. I thought that's what connection looked like, until one day I realized I wasn't living my life anymore. I was curating it, and the distance between who I was and who I was pretending to be started to hurt. If this is hitting you right now, save it. You'll need it the next time you're about to post something just to feel seen. Everyone thinks people who don't post are introverted or shy, but actually, they're often the most observant people in the room. And this means they see what most of us miss. The performance, the desperation, the exhaustion behind every filtered smile. I remember sitting with a friend who hadn't posted in 2 years.
I asked her why.
She said something I'll never forget. She said, "I got tired of turning my life into evidence." That hit me. Because that's exactly what we do. We don't just live moments. We capture them, edit them, caption them, and wait for approval. We turn our existence into a courtroom where strangers decide if we're enough. But she stepped out of that system. And in doing so, she found something most people are still searching for. Presence isn't performed. It's lived. Now here's where it gets interesting. You'd think people who don't post are disconnected, but it's actually the opposite. They're the most connected, because when you stop broadcasting your life, something shifts. You stop thinking in captions. You stop posing for invisible cameras. You start experiencing things for yourself again instead of for a feed. Psychologists call this psychological ownership. It's the feeling that something belongs deeply to you. A memory, a moment, a feeling. And when you post it, that sense of ownership fades. The moment becomes shared property, open to judgment, open to misinterpretation. So people who don't post are guarding something sacred. They're keeping their life untouchable. And maybe that's not withdrawal. Maybe it's the deepest form of self-respect. Think about it. When was the last time you did something beautiful and didn't feel the urge to share it? When was the last time you laughed, cried, or achieved something and didn't immediately think of documenting it? That reflex isn't natural. It's conditioned. A decade of likes and dopamine loops trained us to equate validation with value. The people who never post, they broke that cycle. They rediscovered the simplicity of doing things just because. Cooking without photographing it. Traveling without tagging it. Feeling without explaining it. And in that space, something awakens. A kind of self-awareness that doesn't need an audience. Now, not everyone who stops posting does it from peace. Some do it from fear. Fear of judgment. Fear of being misunderstood. Social media amplified something psychologists call self-presentational pressure. It's the constant awareness that you're being watched even when you're not. And for many, that's exhausting. They worry their words will be misread, or worse, ignored. So they retreat, not because they don't want connection, but because the cost of visibility feels too high. They want to be seen but truly, not superficially. And the loudest people online often have the quietest thoughts. But the quietest people online, they're overflowing. They just choose stillness over spectacle. Comment one word that describes how social media makes you feel. I'm genuinely curious what this community carries. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Not everything you experience is meant to be witnessed. Some of the most profound moments in life happen quietly. Growth, grief, transformation. They happen unseen, unposted, unwitnessed. And when you've lived through enough of those private transformations, you start realizing something powerful. Being unseen is not the same as being insignificant. It's actually where identity is formed, not performed. Because social media was designed to connect us, but it often leaves people feeling more isolated than ever. When you stop posting, you stop chasing digital closeness and start rebuilding real ones. You notice who checks in without needing updates. You learn who remembers you without reminders. That kind of connection feels heavier, warmer, infinitely more real. And the people who don't post live in that space, they build relationships that don't need proof. Now here's what's fascinating. The longer someone stays off social media, the more they begin to see the world differently. Colors look richer. Time feels slower. Conversations feel fuller. It's as if stepping away from the noise makes everything real again. Because when you stop performing, you start experiencing. There's a quiet beauty in walking through life without needing proof of every step. You're not thinking about angles or captions. You're just there, fully alive, inside the moment instead of outside it. And that's something social media rarely lets us do anymore. But the psychology goes even deeper. Every time we post and get attention, our brain releases dopamine, the same chemical involved in reward and addiction. Over time, we crave that validation. We start thinking in terms of shareable experiences instead of real ones. Now imagine someone who resists that loop, someone who deliberately disconnects from the dopamine cycle. That's not disinterest, that's discipline. It takes self-awareness to resist something designed to keep you hooked. People who don't post often have what psychologists call a strong internal locus of control. Their sense of worth and happiness comes from within, not from external approval. They don't need the digital echo of "you're enough" to believe it. And studies show that people who take long breaks from social media experience measurable increases in emotional stability and life satisfaction. Because when your sense of identity is no longer being constantly mirrored back to you, it becomes solid. It becomes real. You're no longer editing your life into something digestible. You're living it in all its messy, beautiful, unfiltered complexity. And that's the real rebellion. Stay whole in a world that rewards fragments. But silence online doesn't always mean serenity. Sometimes it hides exhaustion. For many, social media became a place where they once sought connection, but ended up feeling drained. There's a subtle emotional fatigue that comes from witnessing everyone's highlight reels while you're still trying to piece together your own behind the scenes. You start comparing even when you don't mean to. You start questioning your worth even when you know better. And eventually some people step away not out of bitterness but out of self-preservation. They realize they don't owe the world a performance. They don't owe an explanation for their silence. And they don't need to keep proving they're happy just to be believed. That's one of the quiet truths of this generation. We've confused visibility with value. We assume that to matter we must be noticed. But real meaning doesn't need witnesses. Some of the most meaningful moments of your life will happen without a single person watching. No cameras, no captions, no audience, just you. And maybe that's what people who don't post understand best. Privacy is not loneliness. It's intimacy with yourself. Because when you stop broadcasting every thought, you start hearing your own again. You reconnect with the parts of you that got lost in the noise, your quiet desires, your unspoken fears, your inner compass. And that's something profoundly spiritual in today's world. It's not a withdrawal, it's a homecoming. I call this the invisible presence framework. It protects your peace in a noisy world. Step 1, write this down. My worth is not measured by visibility. Let that sink into your bones. Step 2, apply the 24-hour rule. If sharing something dilutes it, keep it private. If posting it feels like performance, let it stay yours. Step 3, have one real undocumented conversation every week. Sit across from someone, no phones, no distractions, just presence. When you do this, you stop performing life and start living it. You stop chasing applause and start craving peace. And that shift is everything. You used to measure your day by how it looked online. Now you measure it by how it felt in your chest. You used to need validation from strangers. Now you need silence from yourself. You used to think being unseen meant being forgotten. Now you know it means being whole. Hold that feeling. That's you coming back to yourself. That's you realizing your life was never meant to be content. It was meant to be lived. Remember when you scrolled and felt nothing? When every post felt like static and every like felt empty? You're not there anymore. Because now you understand something most people are still chasing. Being unseen doesn't make you insignificant. It makes you free. You don't need to announce your growth for it to be real. You don't need to document your peace for it to matter. You just need to live it. Quietly. Fully. Yours. If this gave you something you didn't know you needed, stay close. Because this is the kind of truth we build here. Not loud. Not flashy. Just real. And maybe silence isn't the absence of connection. Maybe it's where connection finally begins. Maybe the people who never post aren't missing out. Maybe they're the only ones who truly showed up.